Hi, and welcome to another episode of Stack and Strategy, where we talk about all things marketing and martech. Today with me I have Melvin, uh, who we've been good friends with for a while now, and also he is the COO at Innovation Quotient, a leading innovation and digital transformation company in Sri Lanka. And he also is a columnist for the Daily News, where he talks about his experiences and do give a link to that as well. So glad to have you here, Melvin, today.
Thank you, Nikhil. It's been a pleasure. Known each other for so long. It's been a good journey so far. Happy to be here, happy to have a chat and talk all things innovation and transformation.
Great. So to get started, I think we'll start perhaps with your journey and what led you to transformation and innovation. But before we get into what your story has been like, perhaps you could get started with where you work at IQ. And IQ prides itself as a digital transformation and design thinking agency. So if you could just explain to me what that means in practice, and what that has taught you, what you've seen when you work with diverse clients, that'd be great as a starting point.
So I think IQ, when the founders set upon, was a vision of looking at innovation, looking at brand, and looking at technology in a different kind of angle, I would say, and really trying to solve problems with the human in mind. So I've been practicing design for about 8 to 10 years now. What I've understood about design is it starts with the human emotion. What does the human feel first? And then what does the problem that he's facing really look like? So we try to understand that human emotion first, we try to empathize first, then we look at the problem and see, okay, how do we solve this together? So at IQ, we bring in 3 different disciplines. One is strategy, then engineering, and marketing after that. So these 3 disciplines coming together is a beautiful magic, and that's what made me believe in IQ as a vision. We have an art director talking to a senior software engineer, we have a senior software engineer talking to a strategist, and when all of these 3 diverse disciplines come in, the solution becomes really impactful, and that's something that we believe in, and that's the value we try to create for clients as well. Why we differentiate ourselves in the market is we see our local market as a budding digital economy. It's been a big journey, I think, for both of us as well, maybe from 2017 onwards. We've seen the market finally evolve. People understand digital more than just a transaction. They understand digital more than just a post or a front-end piece. Now it's going into the digital economy piece, which is very exciting, and everyone at IQ, we want to ride this wave, and we also want to lead into the market going forward.
That's interesting. So as IQ has grown into transforming various businesses, you yourself in the company has grown from being a business designer to senior business manager and then COO. How has that journey been, and what have your experiences been like? Going from different roles to where you are right now.
So I think it's been a very interesting and rewarding journey as well. If you ask me, one way to describe it is going back to the design principle, right? It's understanding how to manage people and how to get the best out of them. I've led teams from initially when I started out, it was about 2 to 3, and then going from project management to program management, and now kind of managing the business itself. One thing I've learned is people, when they're comfortable, provide the best results. And my job now is to keep that environment. How can I bring the best out of the people that I have? And also the different disciplines from strategy, engineering, marketing. You yourself are data engineer itself, but your mindset is very different from a marketer. So how do I get a marketer's mindset aligned with the engineer's mindset so that my client is happy? I think that's the biggest challenge that I have to face, and it's a challenge that is very interesting, keeps me going. One moment I'm working on a medtech project, and the next moment I'm working on a brand problem for a consumer brand in the market. So it keeps it very light, it keeps it very interesting, and something that we believe in IQ that I kind of also look to put out to the market as well is understanding goals of people and then converting into a technology or a brand or even a simple thing as training. Something that over the last 5 to 6 years that I've been able to do is run workshops And at these workshops, the first thing I tell them is, I'm not here to challenge you, I'm here to challenge your thinking. And that's something that we take a lot of pride in, because challenging someone's thinking is a lot harder than putting out a content piece, putting out a platform, or putting out a piece of strategy deck as well. So that's something that has worked for me in the last 5 years. IQ has constantly challenged my thinking, made me evolve into different roles that I play now. But if you ask me, my biggest achievement in the last 5 years would mainly be around understanding how to get a group of people together, make them driven towards one goal, and also make them happy while going towards that goal.
All right, that's very interesting. I think there's a lot of things to unpack there, from the workshop that you did to how the digital transformation wave is working in Sri Lanka. But maybe let's start with the wave of digital transformation itself, where you mentioned Sri Lanka has been gradually seeing digital in a different lens, and that is something that businesses are starting to adapt.
Yeah.
And IQ has put out the business readiness index for various businesses. When building that, and analyzing a lot of different companies, what sort of trends did you pick up on? What do you tend to see that most businesses need the most at the moment? And how would you say that? How do you say Sri Lanka's digital transformation as a country, but also as individual businesses, been in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
I think they are thinking one of the most important things that I've noticed in the market, and why we did the DRI as well, is the focus being on technology, and the focus being on enterprise tech, your ERPs, your CRMs. We felt it was more of a checkbox that they were looking at. Do we have a CRM? Yes, but how many of your staff are on it? How many of your staff are actually utilizing the tech? And we notice a lot of organizations, be it corporate, be it legacy, be it even funded startups, having a lot of technology debt. They have invested in the tech, but the business is not really unlocking that value. But on paper, yes, they have the tech, it's great, and they also are on different maturities of digital journeys. But the actual value being realized by the business, we felt there was a huge gap. So when we go in usually to be a strategy consultancy project, we try to understand how their utilization of tech is from their leadership's perspective, and also on the ground level. I usually like starting on the ground level, because that's where you really see that value being realized. Throughout this index, what we understood is, no matter the scale of the organization, the problems were pretty much the same. The patterns of problems are pretty much the same. Invested in great tech, the value not being realized, and your staff also not understanding how much of this tech is really needed. In a human or a manual-led process, is the tech needed in the first 2 steps, or is the tech needed in the last few steps? Is it on onboarding, or is it on fulfillment? That clarity is something that we felt was a gap in organizations, and that's what we try to we fill for them. We try to go and say, okay, this is what we've diagnosed, here's what we see, and then from there we help them build the tech, or we try to get the marketing right so their onboarding of customers gets a lot better.
Generally, have you seen this as a improving, something that's improving in the country? Because a lot of, at least the larger brands, tend to now have a digital transformation team. And do you see that this is something that is gradually being changed in the mindset, like you mentioned as well? Because, like you correctly mentioned, a lot of the brands tend to have the assets or the technology behind it. But it's probably the mindset that needs to change again, right? Do you see that mindset shift also happening, and how does that play a role in your index as well?
So I think that's a great question. Something that I've witnessed evolve in this market is the roles. Before, when we first went in, the head of IT would also look at digital. But IT is more engineering, infrastructure, networking, whereas digital is a lot more the business, right? How does digital come in to really accelerate the business forward? So if you see in the market right now, there are more chief digital officers, more chief innovation officers. Now, for example, when I started, I had no one to look at in terms of, okay, innovation, this is the career path that I have. But right now it's evolving, even with from a private and a public perspective also it is evolving. You get the initiatives like GovTech, they're getting the groundwork in terms of capacity in. And something that I've also noticed is people are moving away from the buzzwords now. Before you say AI, everyone wants to be on the AI wagon, everyone wants to be on the newer CRM. I think it's moving a bit more. The market is maturing. We have a long way to go. We have a lot of clients from the European market, the Singapore market, and also the Saudi market. Their maturity and our maturity, there is a bit of a long gap. But I think finally we are on the right track. People are realizing the importance and the difference between digital IT and digital transformation. There's a huge misconception of digitizing meant transformation. Transformation has nothing to do with digitizing. Digitizing is the first step of getting on that digital journey, right? So I think that maturity is coming in a lot more aggressively now compared to the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, that's very true. I think we can see that not just in the private sector but also in the public sector. There's a lot of transformation that's starting to happen, at least the very first steps, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you work with a lot of brands and businesses and interact with their data, design, and technology. In your experience, which of those do you think are the key elements that marketing teams most commonly neglect, and which do you think are the most important for them to focus on?
I think that's a really interesting question, Nikhil, because we like to focus on this phase called discovery, right? Where you're trying to discover your customer a bit more. Does your customer, like, for example, say, is ordering on an app? What is his buying time like? Is he buying, buying at from 6 to 8? Is he buying that because he's hungry, or is he buying that because he's free? So if he's going to be free at 6 o'clock, your ads should start ideally by 5 to 4. So that discovery piece is what I feel a lot of brands accelerate. They like to go into execution directly without really spending and pausing the time to spend with your potential customer. We did this project for a client from Singapore. They were trying to introduce a new bank into our market. First thing I told them was, let's understand if your target audience is ready for this. And when we did that project, we realized their target audience wasn't ready for it. So they saved close to about $2 million because they paused to discover. I think a lot of brands, if they pause enough to understand, okay, this is exactly how our target audience is feeling, our target audience is behaving, then getting about the brand and marketing gets a lot more easier. It gets a lot more targeted. And then your performance marketing ads also are on the right funnel from your awareness to your sale. It becomes a lot more contextualized. I think that's where a lot of brands should focus a bit more than going directly into blind execution. I would advise most brand managers, brand CMOs to spend some time pausing, do more focus lyrics, understand what your customer really looks like, and also understand and empathize with your customer before trying to sell to your customer.
That's true. So where do you see this gap forming? Is it because of maybe wrong KPIs being set, or maybe wrong strategic targets being set, or is it just the rush to get ahead? Or could it be completely a mind shift that needs to happen for these brands to actually think differently? Where do you think that gap lies, or what needs to change fundamentally?
I think it's a couple of factors, right? If you look at corporate or brands in general, everything is urgent.
Yeah.
But no one has ever asked, why is it urgent? Why is this KPI set in a way that you achieve it in 2 weeks, achieve it in 1 week? Is it because of the P&L pressure, or is it because of the strategic pressure for management? Why is it that the sense of urgency is kind of practiced across multiple things? Certain campaigns, certain objectives, I get it. But everything in corporate is urgent, which goes away from the society we live in now, right? People's attention spans are reducing, everything is fast-paced. So don't you think if we do slow down, if we do pause, we'll be able to capture their attention a bit more? Because 5 years ago, maybe not even 10 years ago, our ability to stop and look at a piece of content was a lot higher. Now we are used to a bit more fast-paced, right? So then you just, as a brand, putting 20 pieces of content a week, you're going to get lost. So if you're going to understand human behavior and then structure your brand and communication plan, it will help you gauge your market a lot more. But right now, I see a lot of brands doing this, 20, 30 pieces of content a month, and constantly running communications. Is your consumer really paying attention to it? Or can you grab a person's attention for a long time periods?
Yeah.
If you take advertising from maybe 30, 40 years ago, they used to craft their communication, right? Every piece of content was written, there's a copywriter that spent years, hours of research writing it, but we've moved away from those fundamentals, and that's because of the digital and media that we consume. So if that's the case, as a brand owner, what should you do? Should you keep up with that pace, or should you pause and make it a lot more relatable to your audience?
Well, one of the things that might be happening is they're feeling the pressure to compete and
Correct,
do the same thing that all the other brands are doing as well, right? Because you don't want to be the driving force for a change which might fail, and then you're going to get all the blame for not doing the same thing that every other brand is probably doing, right?
No, I think that goes back to change management, right? Humans in general, we just hate change.
Yeah. I think we were just talking about Roy Southern beforehand, right? I think there was an example where he was talking about why flights from London City Airport to the US don't work out well. It's because the person that is booking the flight is probably an assistant secretary whose incentives aren't really aligned with getting you the best experience possible, but getting the least flat possible, right? Whereas if you book from Heathrow, since you have a lot of flights going out, you probably just get rebooked on the next one. But if you go to London City and take a flight out, you're probably going to be stuck there for a while, and then you're going to book the flight. It's going to be
trouble out.
Yeah, exactly. So there might be a bit of that playing a role where mindset shift might be taking a bit of backseat just because of the incentive structure as well there.
Good. I think that's a great example, like we just spoke about Rory as well. So Rory looks at human behavior, right? He understands. We like to think we are very rational beings. We are not. We are very emotional beings, right? So from a brand's perspective, the more you connect with a person, the more they get involved in your ecosystem. So something that tells CMOs as well, look at your ecosystem first. How much of your ecosystem is a consumer really in, and how much are they just coming into it? A global brand that I follow very closely is in the food and beverage space. They do it really well. They understand, okay, this is my consumer and here's my ecosystem. How do I make him play in my ecosystem? And not just see one piece of content and move on. Coca-Cola does it really well. If you see, they had a super campaign for the World Cup. They are playing with the ecosystem, and the product is kind of there. It's not everyday communication that they're focused on. So it really depends on one, the priorities of the brand, and two, also the mindsets. If you're chasing the character like everyone else, you're going to be like everyone else. And I think that would be one thing whenever I speak to these leaders that I say, yes, your communication going out there is important, but who is really consuming it? Have you looked at that? Have you understood that? If you do that, pause and do that, your communication will kind of end up in a sale, and not communication for the sake of communication.
Very true. And I think a lot of this has been shifted quite a lot recently with AI being a major role as well, playing a major role as well, from all the way from creative creation to ideation to even the analysis being done, the marketing analysis. How do you think AI is playing a role in the Sri Lankan market from what you've seen, and also outside of Sri Lanka from your experience? How do you think AI is playing a role in either positively driving innovation, but also negatively, increasing the amount of content out there without actually good content and good strategy being behind it?
So I think there, Nikin, one of the biggest things that AI has done is help companies with ideation. I would say ideation and prototyping. I get briefs now that are either a prototype of a website being sent to me saying, okay, what's the next step? Or I get content pieces done, and common feedback that I've always got in the last 1.5 years. I can do it better on AI. These are comments from the market because they're using these tools, right? But the difference between an AI output and an output by a designer that has spent these last 10 years getting that expertise is the eye. A person's eye is very unique to them, and that is what creates value. If you look at all the AI outputs, there is no eye, there is no design eye. Everything looks the same. You can spot, I think, right now between you and I and a couple of our friends also, we can spot an AI content the moment we see it. Because AI doesn't have an eye. An eye is based on taste. So, yes, it has helped in terms of ideation, it has helped in terms of prototyping, but it is reducing the ability for a human to develop that taste, to develop that eye, and to create content that really resonates. If both of us now after this episode put a poll out, how much of this AI content you really like seeing, we're going to get a really different feedback about it. And even from a production's point of view, the difference, understanding the difference between an AI production and a live production is something that our market is exploring still. There are certain elements that you can do when you do your live productions that you can't with AI productions. But people are running towards speed now. Everything, like I said before, everything is urgent. Where as a society used to a lot more be fast-paced, which is why AI is working. But the downside of it is, I would say, development of taste, development of an eye, and also development of deep expertise. Even in strategy, we recently presented this strategy for a client overseas. That client's ability to kind of understand and put deep work into it was a lot more compared to our local market. And that's also because our local market is getting to this new speed, whereas the foreign markets are saying, whoa, it's moving a bit too fast. Can we pause and see what's out there? So I don't think it's anyone's fault, especially when new technology comes in. There's a wave that we kind of run, right? Yeah. But I think that bubble will burst sometime soon, and we will go back to understanding the art behind creation, the art behind be it creative, be it engineering, be it marketing. It is an art. It's a lot of creativity first and technology next. So I think we will get there, but right now technology has a bit more ahead of us.
That's true. So I think one of the core things that brands probably would need to understand and distinguish between is what type of AI is actually providing and enabling digital transformation, and what type of AI is actually hurting your brand's marketing or whatever your goals are. How do you think is the best method to distinguish between these two and make sure that you are always on the correct track and using AI for the betterment of the brand rather than creating more slop and so on?
Correct. I think it comes down to your value creation, right? And where does that value get realized? Now, if you take a piece of content, your value creation is you can do it fast. But is that value getting realized with your customer is what you need to really look at. Now, I've seen constant, be it internal comms companies, and I don't see the major brands messing around with AI in that way, but the smaller brands where everything is AI generated. But is your consumer really realizing that value is where you should look at. An interesting workshop over this week where one of the marketing guys just stood up and said, we are digital, but are we effective? And that was a very powerful question to the room, and it's something that I appreciated from him as well, where he understood, yes, we have our funnels, we have our tools tracking, we have our performance funnels, ads are going out, but are we really effective? Is it driving sales? Is it driving brand equity? No, I think brands should focus more on understanding where that value is being realized than the art of just creating the value, than the speed of creating the value, than just getting all these AI tools in and putting output out and not realizing whether that output is really realized in the market or realized by the consumer.
So, since you mentioned workshops, right? Let me ask a question about that. So when you do conduct these workshops about digital transformation, about design thinking and a mindset shift, how do you distinguish or how do you identify teams that are ready for that mindset shift, and what would you say is the single biggest shift that separates the teams that are ready for that transformation, that innovation, and the ones that are?
I think the biggest thing is curiosity. How curious is your staff to be open to change? So most of these workshops that we run, I always start with a simple question. I try to ask people what are they good at and what are they bad at. You won't believe the number of times that people have answered, we are bad at this, faster than what we are good at. And that's a normal human thing, right? Where we are quick to criticize and very slow to compliment another. So I start there. I try to understand, okay, this team is more curious, they'll be able to handle change. And with digital transformation, one of the biggest things in terms of methodology that we believe in is you need to align your people to your process and then to your tech. Not your tech to your process and then to your people, right? So when we do these workshops, we try to understand what is the maturity like, and based on this maturity, what's the process that you are currently following. You might have a better way to do it, and that's my job.
Right.
My job is to see if there's a better way to do it, and then use the tech that is available. Be it your generative AI or be it your process automations, what tech can come in to evolve that. And I'll give you a small example with when Uber came in the market. Uber challenged a behavior, and that behavior was not an easy behavior to challenge, right? Right now we get into a stranger's car. We never got it. 20 years ago, getting into a stranger's car is not even thought of, right? Yeah. And people say that kids in stranger's car. So that was a huge human behavior that was kind of shifted. So what Uber did well there was understand people had anxiety waiting for a cab. People didn't like how much, they didn't like the fact that they didn't know how much they would pay until they got there. And the third one is people just liked constant information. So those three human behaviors is what drove that transformation. And it was a huge digital transformation for the cab industry. The New York Cab Association was completely against when Uber came in, right? And if you look at people, for instance, in our market, what they understood was that the two guys mentality. They understood that if you can meet them at their mentality, you'll be able to do something in this local market. So it goes back to people again. It goes back to understanding how does that person perceive value and what is the process and the tech that we need to give them that value. And I think that's the beauty of these workshops. And I have the privilege to do these workshops for your C-levels, to your senior managers, and then your down-level staff as well. Something I always tell them, I like an intern at the same table as the CEO, because then the intern can share an idea which he might not be able to share in his workplace, especially in certain industries. You're not really taught to look at the person and not the title. You're trained to look at the title, right? So these workshops is a great way to pause everyone and say, okay, here we are here for this objective. Let's look at this idea in this angle and see how we can take this to market, and it might transform your business and it might transform your team's mindset as well.
All right, that's very interesting. I think one of the examples that I saw is that since you mentioned Uber as well, if you take the Southeast Asian market, Uber kind of failed, right? It's primarily because when I was in Malaysia as well, what I saw is this brand called Grab, which is now the largest ride-hailing provider in all Southeast Asia, took a slightly different approach. They looked at it from a cash-based perspective, whereas Uber was mainly looking at digital transactions, and there was also all the things about them not having local officers, local engagement was low, and so on. So that goes to show that you need to have that localization and that local thing into any product that you're putting out. And also, since you mentioned about how you like to have all the C-suite execs and the interns and everyone at the table, let me ask you one question about the CMO specific, and maybe we can look at how newcomers can play a role as well. So, first of all, if you're taking a look at the C-suites, how do you think, or what steps do you think, rather, they should take before implementing new tech into their company, into their organization? What kind of transformation prerequisites are there before they bring in that tech? I think this goes well with one thing you mentioned at the very beginning in terms of where Sri Lanka is at. We have the tech, but we don't have the mindset, we don't have the processes in place. So what would you give as advice to a CMO or anyone in a similar role today?
I think from my perspective, something that I always tell C-level is looking at your brand architecture from a holistic point of view, and then understanding what tech do you need and prototyping it. Be it an analytic tool, or be it a generation tool, be it even a video generation tool. Do you need it right now, or do you need it in the next 12 months? And it comes down to the goals. Are you building brand equity right now? Are you looking at a sales funnel? Or are you looking at understanding your consumer a bit more and then bringing the right tools in? Something that I've seen, the difference between a CEO and a CMO. A CEO is more numbers driven, likes his sales, likes his conversion. And he will put the pressure on a CMO to bring those sales. But a CMO can hold his ground and say, no, I'm building brand equity at this point. It's not about the sales function. It's not about getting your leads. Yes, you can do a lead generation campaign and get some leads, but that isn't only result in the success. You're putting the brand out there. You're understanding how to build brand equity. An example I can give you is for a paid consumer brand that I work with. We did this campaign for Vesak from a simple human insight, where we said, back in the day, kids used to give Vesak cards with the lanterns during, that was a tradition, especially outside Colombo more than in Colombo. We took that, built a landing page, built that landing page over 2 days, used AI for it, where you can build your own digital Vesak lantern and you can have your own message with it. You won't believe it, Nikhil, most of our adoption was from Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa. We had lanterns made from Jaffna. So we had island-wide engagement in terms of going to that platform. It's a human behavior, right? You have to go to the platform, you have to create your lantern, and you can share it on WhatsApp. We had 8,000, 9,000 people doing it, and almost 1 million unique visitors on the site. Did it drive sales? Is another question.
Yeah.
But did it increase brand equity? Yes.
Yeah.
About 1 million people knew your brand.
And it's going to be on top of mind, right?
It's going to be top of mind for in terms of the funnel, right?
Yeah.
But that same scenario, if you look at it from a sales point of view, you can say it didn't drive sales. But what was the priority at that point? So for a CMO, I always tell them, prioritize your metric before going into a financial year. Is it brand equity 60%, sales, lead generation another 40%, then use your tech. Now in this instance, it was brand equity. So we used the tech that was available, did a turnaround in 2 days, and ran the campaign. And from end to end, right? From idea generation, platform generation, your performance marketing, all of it was done. Did it increase brand equity? Yes, it did. But it doesn't also mean it will increase your lead and your sales funnel. So those are two different conversations. And I think if CMOs get into more forums to do that planning, understand, okay, this year this is what I want to reach, this is the technology that is available for me, how do I bring it to increase these two metrics? And that's something that I feel more people talking about it, more CMOs coming together and having a conversation about it, will one, help the market, and also will help the balance between a CEO and a CMO. For me, a CEO or a CWO's main priority is your revenue. So he will always ask you, yes, you're doing fancy campaigns, you won awards, it's not reflecting on my P&L. That is his perspective. But from a CMO seat, it's understanding, no, I'm doing all this to ensure that that P&L is strong. The P&L also translates over a long time period and not just for campaign.
So I think it comes back again to that longer time span and
Correct.
thinking about longer term strategy as well.
Correct. I think that alignment is very important for the working teams. So the working teams know exactly where they're going, what's the direction for this quarter, and how do we understand building this for the future is something that I would advise, or not even advise, my request to CMOs would be that, to really look at that and then take it out from there.
And then, so now that we touched on the CMO
Yeah.
and leadership thing, for someone that's entering into the market as maybe let's say a digital manager or an exec or even an intern into the digital transformation side, what would your message to them be?
Someone, either starting their career or getting their first boosting, I think my message to them would be to stay curious in the market and also have the patience to build deep expertise. Because if you look at the tools that we have right now, output is almost even. You have your generative tools that gives you multiple outputs, right? How do you translate that with context? is the skill. If you can't do that, then the technology will run a race that you have to play catch up to. So I think that will be my biggest advice for anyone coming into the market. Spend time in deep expertise, be it content creation, or be it performance marketing, be it technology, be it engineering. You need to spend that time for yourself to get the context. You can borrow information, but you can never translate or articulate information if you've not experienced it, if you've not lived through it. I think when I hire now, it's one of the first things that I ask is, how long do you see yourself before becoming an expert? If you want to become an expert in a year or two, it really doesn't work like that. This is not me saying they don't have the talent for it, they have the talent for it. But there is a big difference between tacit knowledge and also acquired knowledge, right? Tacit knowledge takes a bit of time. It takes a lot of grooming, it takes a lot of analysis to kind of say, okay, this is the type of information that I believe in. That plus put yourself out there. You're not going to survive in the digital economy if you're not there with the market. You need to understand how to be there with the market, right? You need to understand how the market is responding, how your peers are responding, spend time with senior staff. Don't let technology run a race before you. It will, but try to catch up. Make sure that gap is always shortening and not prolonging.
I think that goes to see a mindset shift as well, because a lot of the young generation, a lot of the people entering into the workforce are looking at, always shifting roles, always looking at new things. Rather, what you're saying is try to stick to one thing and be expert in that.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I think more or less, I think it's about getting depth in knowledge first. Then you can pivot.
Yeah.
You can pivot across domains. You can pivot across even industries, because you know there is a foundation that has been set, right? I think a lot of young talent sometimes try to accelerate that foundation, which is also because you can't blame them. The exposure is a lot more. The exposure to multiple events in the market, exposure to the global markets. Now, if you take the industry 20 to 30 years ago, the level of exposure was very limited. Now, even if you're a 21, 22-year-old executive, you can start your own page, you can build your brand, you can converse with people abroad, you can share your thoughts. All of that is an effect, the mindset that these guys have right now, which I would say is a good thing. But you should know when to regulate, when to regulate your speed, when to build that domain expertise first, and then kind of evolve from there. You can't go into evolution without understanding where you are right now. So in order to understand what you want in your career is something that I would feel a lot of more young people should pause, think, and then maybe see where it goes. There's never one way to do it. My perspective has always been from what I've observed in the market with the guys I've trained, and understood that what ticks them is always very different from maybe what motivated both of us when we started off. But the fundamental never changes. The fundamental is that any human takes time to get good at something. It goes back to design as well, right? And throughout my perspective in my career and even in my writing, something that I like to put out as a message is, at the end of the day, we're all humans. Whether it's a title, whether it's a business that you own, or whether it's a creative, you take all of that away. We just want connection, right? So start there. Start with understanding yourself first, and then understanding your peers, your market, and build your career from that angle. And it's not, I'm an AI expert, I'm a branding expert. Yes, you can become that, but don't focus there. Focus on growth first.
Right, that's I think a great place to wrap up as well. I think we talked about a lot of different things, from transformation in Sri Lanka to how to have that mindset shift, and so on. So it was great having you here with us, Melvin. And yeah, thanks for joining in with us.
Thank you, Nitin. I think it's been a pleasure. Thank you for setting this up, and I think you're doing a lot of great things in the market. I've seen Common Goals journey from its initial stages as well. Something I've been very proud to see, first as a friend, and second also looking at how you are translating it in the market, be it in this market or with your global customers as well. I hope it keeps growing, more people start understanding the product a bit more. But the market is going in the right direction, and I hope you ride that wave as well. So I wish you and your team the very best, and catch you on the next one.
Wish you the same, Melvin. Great seeing your group there as well.
Cheers, bro.
All right. Thank you then.